Rama Manamohana Shyama Manamohananga Rama Manamohana Shyama Prema Suguna Rama Prema Suguna Rama Vaidehi Hridaya Sadarama Manamohananga Rama Manamohana Shyama Manamohananga Rama Manamohana Shyama Kuladhira Dinakara Kuladhira Rajasevita Shrikara Dinakara Kuladhira Rajasevita Shrikara Janagana Mandara Janagana Mandara Sajjana Hridaya Vihara Sajjana Hridaya Vihara Manamohananga Rama Manamohana Shyama Manamohananga Rama Manamohana Shyama Manamohana Shyama Manamohana Shyama
Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vaivasvataya Mrityave Brahmavidyāchārya Nachiketa Secha. Humble pranams to one and all. So we were seeing the chariot metaphor. So Lord Yamaraj says, the one who has control over the mind and the senses is the one who has the right knowledge, Vijñānavan. Such a person alone, Saha Adhvanav Param Apnoti. Such a person alone reaches the end of the road. Such a traveler alone reaches the destination. And what is that destination? Tat Vishnoho Paramam Padam. It is the supreme abode of Vishnu. So that abode is the supreme abode, the highest. So what is that abode and how is that abode the highest? So this has to be pointed out. So for that purpose, the following discussion is taken up. So in the last class we were seeing verse number 10. So in verse number 10 and 11, it is said what are the lower things and what are the higher things, and which is higher than what. All those descriptions were given. So we were discussing that. So in spirituality, when do we say that entity A is higher than entity B? So there are 5 definitions given. So what are the 5? Number 1, sukshmatvat, that which is subtle is higher. Second one, mahan, meaning mahat-tvat, that which is mahan is higher. Mahan means more important, great. Depending upon the context, we will have to see the meaning of mahan. That which is important in the functioning of an entity is higher. That which is great is higher. So mahat-tvat. And then pratyagatmatvat, pratyagatma bhutat, pratyagatma bhutat, that which is inner, closer to us is higher. Then karanatvat, that which is the cause is higher than the effect. And the 5th one, niyamakatvat, that which is the controller is higher than the controlled. So these are the ways in which we see which entity is higher. Right, so we had already taken up this discussion. So the first one, it is said, indriyebhyah parahi artha. Compared to the sense organs, sense objects are the higher. They are higher ones. So naturally a question may come, how can sense objects be higher? Because we see that sense objects are far away, but the sense organs, they are near. But according to one of these definitions, it is pratyagatma bhutat. The nearer one is higher. So therefore we had seen in the last class that when we say here sense objects, we refer to the impression created in the mind by that sense object. How is the impression created in the mind? When the sense organs are exposed to the sense objects in the presence of the mind, so an impression is created in the mind. This impression is what we call as sense objects, because that person is interacting with that impression. The mind, the intellect, the vasanas, they are all dealing with that impressions. So therefore, in that sense, we can definitely say the sense objects are nearer, sense objects are more subtler. So all those definitions that we have seen in the last class. So sense objects are higher than the sense organs. Then compared to these sense objects, the mind is higher. Why the mind is higher? The mind is higher because the mind is nothing but the thought medium. It is this thought medium which is supporting these impressions. Without this thought medium, these impressions have no existence. And moreover, it is because of the mind that these impressions have entered through the sense organs. So because of all these reasons, the mind is definitely higher than the sense objects. And the next one is manasastu para buddhihi. compared to mind, buddhi, the intellect, is higher. So how is intellect higher than the mind? So let us apply these definitions. So first one, sukshmatvat. Intellect is subtler than the mind. Intellect is subtler than the mind. Now how can we prove it to ourselves that intellect is subtler? See, anything that is subtle is difficult to perceive, because we have seen that which is subtle has lesser properties, that which is gross has more properties. We have seen earth is gross because it has all the 5 properties, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Space is subtle because it has only 1 property. So in this way, lesser the properties, more subtler it is. This is one definition. Another definition is, the easier we are able to perceive, the more gross it is. And the more difficult in perception, subtler it is. This can be another way of understanding what is being subtle. Now, mind is the faculty in us which decides based on right and wrong. The intellect is the faculty in us which decides based on right and wrong, and the mind is the faculty in us which decides based on likes and dislikes. So generally, whom do we listen to? We always listen to the mind, isn't it? That which I like, I do. That which I don't like, I don't do. Whereas buddhi is not like that. It tells us what is right. So it is always guiding us based on right and wrong. Definition of buddhi is sat pakshapatini buddhihi. That which always favors sat, the truth, is called buddhi. Buddhi always loves the truth. It always favors the truth. It always wants us to walk the path of the truth, walk the path of righteousness. This is the nature of buddhi. But we always find that we are not able to perceive the buddhi and listen to this buddhi, obey this buddhi. It is little difficult. We have to exert a little. We have to go within a little. There is a struggle involved because buddhi is subtler, you see. And subtler a thing, more silent it is. So more difficult to listen to it. All the blunders that we do is only because we don't listen to our intellect, we listen to the mind. Why is it that we are tempted to listen to the mind? Mind is more noisy than the intellect. It is exactly like in the society. In the society we find the wise people, the noble people, the sattvic people, the pure-hearted people, they are generally silent. And who are the noisy people? The extroverted people, the foolish people, the powerful people, the influential people, the sensuous people, they are generally very noisy. All the newspapers are filled with the sayings of these people only. In the society we have wise people, but their sayings are generally gone unheard. They know the right way of living, but there is no one to listen to them. And these people, these wise people, are generally silent people. So all the problems that we see in the society is only because we don't listen to the wise people in the society. We listen only to these noisy people in the society. all the problems in the society is only because these noisy people are the ones who are guiding the generation. This is a tragedy. If you see all the wars that have happened in the world, it is only because of these noisy, foolish people who have created these wars. In the same way, in us there are these two entities, the intellect and the mind. Mind is foolish because it takes decision based on likes and dislikes. At the same time, this mind is very noisy also, because it is addicted to so many wrong things, and because there is addiction, it compels us to do the wrong thing. Whereas the buddhi, it is always silent but wise. So, what is the one thing we have to do? We must listen to this intellect. So the point here which I want to make is this. The very fact that we find it difficult to listen to intellect shows that intellect is subtler than the mind. You have to put forth effort, you have to look within, you have to quieten the mind. In a quietened mind, we are able to listen to this intellect. Intellect is able to guide us only when we have made our mind quiet, and when we consciously, with effort, when we listen to this intellect in a prayerful mood, only then we are able to get the guidance from this intellect. The voice of conscience, this voice comes from the intellect. But to listen to this voice of conscience, it is necessary that we make our mind sattvic. We make our mind prayerful. Only then this intellect is able to guide us. Subtler a thing, more difficult it is to perceive that thing. So this itself shows that intellect is subtler than the mind. Sukshmatvat. Second one, Mahat-tattva. Intellect is more important than the mind. It is more powerful than the mind. Why intellect is more important and powerful and great? It is because the power to decide is given to this intellect. Mind, how much ever it is addicted to something, it has no right to take decision. Only when the intellect gives permission, only then the mind can operate. So who is powerful? Definitely intellect is powerful. And of course, because intellect is wise, it is great. Anyone who is wise, anyone who has knowledge, anyone who takes decisions based on right and wrong, definitely such an entity is great, is important. So by all reasons, we can say intellect is Mahan compared to the mind. The third one, Pratyagatma Bhutat. Intellect is nearer to us compared to the mind. How can we say that? See, anything which is nearer, anything which is inner is able to observe the outer. The inner is able to witness the outer is never able to witness the inner. This is a law, this is a rule. For example, the mind is able to witness the sense organs and the sense objects. Why is the mind able to witness the sense organs? Because the mind is inner, sense organs are outer. So whichever is inner is able to witness the outer. That's why we said sense objects here means the impressions in the mind. Because otherwise, if you take the outer sense objects present in the world, you will find that sense organs are witnessing the outer sense objects. So it goes against the law. So that is why we have taken this definition that sense objects are the impressions in the mind. So here, intellect is able to observe all the tricks played by the mind in order to get its desires fulfilled. Intellect is able to observe. It knows, see, this mind is playing all these pranks because it likes that sense object and it wants that sense object. Therefore, it is doing all these tricks. Therefore, it is playing all these pranks. Therefore, it is persuading the intellect to take decision in its favor. So, intellect is able to observe the mind and its plays and its tricks. So, that itself shows intellect is witnessing the mind. And since intellect is witnessing the mind, we can say intellect is nearer to us compared to mind. So, pratyagatma bhutat. Fourth one, karanatvat. The cause. Intellect is the cause of the mind. Means what? Intellect is the cause for mind's functioning. In the sense, mind can go ahead and command the sense organs only after getting permission from intellect. Because intellect is the decision-making authority. Because intellect is the decision-making authority, unless intellect has not taken the decision, mind cannot act. Only when intellect has taken the decision, mind can act. So therefore, we can say intellect is the cause for the mind to act. So karanatvat. And the fifth one, niyamakatvat, controller. So who is controlling? Intellect is controlling the mind. It is very simple. The same logic can be used. Intellect controls the mind because without intellect's decision, mind cannot function. So by all means we can say intellect is higher than the mind. Manasastu para buddhihi. The next one, buddheratma mahan paraha. So compared to buddhi, what is higher? Mahānātmā, that is the term used here. Mahānātmā. Mahānātmā means great self. Now what is this Mahānātmā? It is not that Paramatma. Here Mahānātmā means Mahat-tattva. So compared to buddhi, Mahat-tattva is greater. Now what is this Mahat-tattva? Mahat-tattva is another name for Hiranyagarbha. Now what is this Hiranyagarbha? We had discussed long back. Hiranyagarbha is the totality of mind intellect. So samashti mind intellect is called Hiranyagarbha. The totality. Now in this case we will say intellect. So the totality of the intellect is called Mahat-tattva or Hiranyagarbha. All beings, whether it is plants, animals, insects, microorganisms, all those living beings, they have this intellect in them. So the totality of all intellects is what is called as Hiranyagarbha. So naturally, this Hiranyagarbha or Mahat-tattva is higher than buddhi, the individual intellect. So the individual intellect in me is called buddhi. The totality of intellect in the whole world is what is called as Mahat-tattva. So naturally, which is greater? This Mahat-tattva is greater. So now apply all these 5 definitions. Mahat-tattva must be sukshmatvat. It is subtler than our intellect. Now how can we understand that? Remember, whatever is subtler is more difficult to perceive. So in us, we are all a part of that Mahat-tattva. Our intellect is a part of that totality of intellect. Vyashti is always a part of the samashti. Individual is a part of the total. So now, we are able to access this intellect, but are we able to access this Mahat-tattva, the totality of intellect, we find that it is difficult. We find that it is difficult. You will always find that whenever we are confused, we don't know what to do, in a prayerful mode, when we turn to the Lord and seek His guidance, surrendering completely unto that Lord, and when we seek His guidance, you will find that guidance comes. Now, how is Bhagavan able to guide us? Bhagavan is able to guide us because our intellect is a part of that total intellect. Bhagavan's intellect is that total intellect. So here Hiranyagarbha, we can say that it is that Saguna Brahman, that Supreme Lord. So our intellect is a part of the total intellect, and the total intellect is the intellect of the Lord. So in a prayerful mood, when we turn to the Lord, that Lord knows what is best for us, what is the solution to our problem. He knows it. So what happens is, from that total intellect, right guidance is given to this individual intellect. And how do we experience it? We experience it as a voice of conscience. So this voice of conscience is nothing but the voice coming through our intellect, but from this total intellect. So the source of infinite knowledge, which is God, which is this total intellect, from that wisdom percolates through our individual intellect, and then from the depth of our heart we are able to listen to this guidance. Now this guidance is what we call as voice of conscience. And from where is it coming from? It is coming from Mahat-tattva. Mahat-tattva. Now you will always find that unless you are in that prayerful mood, unless the ego is completely surrendered, unless the mind is pure and sattvic, we will never be able to listen to this voice of conscience. See, that is why we say, subtler you are, the more easily you are able to connect to the Lord. Subtlety of the mind is the qualification, and the mind becomes subtle. Mind here means intellect. Mind and intellect both are anyway the same, antakarana. So, when our thoughts are pure, our antakarana, the inner instrument, the mind intellect instrument becomes pure, and when we are pure, we are able to connect to the divine, and when we are connected to the omniscient divinity in us, we are able to get the guidance for all our problems. The point which we are trying to make here is this, that Mahat-tattva is subtler than our intellect. Great Mahātmās who have thoroughly purified their mind, they are ever in touch with the Lord. So ever in touch with the Lord means what? They are in touch with this Mahat-tattva, and that is why they are able to predict future. That is why they are able to, understand the questions of the seeker even before they have asked. In fact, they are able to sometimes read the mind of others also. How is it that they are able to do all this? They are able to do all this because they are connected to the total intellect. So once you are connected to the total intellect, you are able to understand what is happening in the minds of others. Such abilities we see, such miracles performed by Mahātmās, it is all because their individual buddhi is connected to Mahat-tattva. So therefore, Sukshmatvat. The second one, Mahatvat. Of course, Mahat-tattva is Mahan, great. because by all means it is great, because the individual intellect, it is sustained by, supported by that total intellect. Mahat-tvat pratyagatma bhutat. Pratyagatma bhutat. This Mahat-tattva is closer to us. Now this is something great. Compared to our intellect, what is nearer? This Mahat-tattva is nearer. And that is why this Mahat-tattva is able to watch the happenings in our intellect. You see this? Mahat-tattva is a witness of our intellect. Why is it able to witness? It is able to witness because the inner can always witness the outer. The subtler can always witness the grosser. And that is why we get the karmaphala. We perform some karma. We think nobody has seen, but there is somebody who is seeing it. That Lord in the form of Mahat-tattva is seeing the karmas being performed. And therefore, we get the karma phalas. You see. Who has seen? The Lord has seen. How? Yes. The totality of intellect, it is seeing it. That Hiranyagarbha is seeing it. That Lord is seeing it. Whatever we think, you cannot escape the eye of the Lord. You cannot escape being noticed by the Lord. Bhagwan's attention is always upon us because our intellect is a part of the total intellect. Every thought that we entertain is noticed by that Supreme Lord. So, pratyagatma bhutat, and then karanatvat, of course. Mahat-tattva is the karana for our buddhi. It is a cause. Our buddhi is functioning because it is a part of this Mahat-tattva. Remaining in Mahat-tattva, it is able to function. So therefore, Mahat-tattva is the cause of this buddhi. And then niyamakatvat, controller also. Of course, yes. Our buddhi is controlled by this totality, this Mahat-tattva. So by all means we can say Mahat-tattva is higher than buddhi. Buddhēratmā mahān parah. And then what is the next one? Mahatah param avyaktam. Higher than this Mahat-tattva is avyakta. Avyakta. Avyakta means that which is unmanifest. There is a literal translation of avyakta. But then we have to understand what this avyakta is. What is this unmanifest thing? So, Mahat-tattva, as we have said, it is the totality of mind intellect. Now, the very same Mahat-tattva in its bija form, seed form, is called avyakta. In its unmanifest form is called avyakta. So here let us see what Bhagavan Shankarāchārya says about avyakta. So Bhagavan says, Sarvasya jagatah bija bhutam. This avyakta is bija bhutam, is like a seed. For what? Sarvasya jagata, for the whole universe. For the whole cosmos, this avyakta is like the seed. So generally this happens in the pralaya state, dissolution. When the whole world, it goes from manifest state to unmanifest state. So then what remains is only avyakta, the unmanifest state. So it is from this avyakta that the whole cosmos emerge out. So that seed form of everything in this world, that seed form is called avyakta. Sarvasya jagatah bija bhutam avyakrita nama rupa satatvam. It is the essence of all names and forms in the manifest state. Whatever we see in this world, the essence of it finally remains, and that essence is what is called as avyakta. Then Sarva Karya Karana Shakti Samahara Rupam. It is Shakti Samahara. It is the aggregate of all powers. All powers, because of which the Karana gets transformed into Karya. So what is this world? It is nothing but the play of cause and effect, isn't it? The cause gets transformed into effect. But for the cause to get transformed into effect, there has to be some power, some energy, some force, some strength. So the aggregate of all these strengths, because of which the cause gets transformed into effect, this aggregate of power is called Avyakta. So it is something like, in the modern context, modern science, we can say it is something like the potential energy. So this potential energy is not something seen. Kinetic energy is seen. There is a movement, so we can see that energy in motion. But potential energy is something which is unseen, something which is unmanifest, something which is latent. It is there, but it is not seen. So in the same way, this Avyakta is a power which is present, but in its unmanifest state. So when does it become manifest? When the world comes out of Pralaya, when the world emerges after Pralaya, so then we see this potential energy getting transformed into kinetic energy. Kinetic means motion. So we see this cause effect taking place. Again, after some time, what happens? Pralaya happens. All these powers become unmanifest. They get into their potential state. So all the powers in their potential state is what is called as Avyakta. And also Shankarāchārya says Avyakta, Avyakrita, Akasha Adi, Nama Vachyam. There are so many names given to it. Avyakta, Avyakrita, Akasha. These are all the names generally given to Avyakta. Now, sometimes this Avyakta is also called as Prakriti or Maya. Now, these are the terms which generally we are aware of, because all the scriptures, they talk about this Prakriti. So, Bhagavan says sometimes, I with my Prakriti, with my Maya, I create all this, etc. So, this Avyakta, this power is sometimes also called as Prakriti or Maya. So, therefore, Bhagavan Shankarāchārya says, Paramatmani Otaprota Bhavena Samashritam. This power, this Avyakta, this power, it is always there with the Lord. It never gets separated from the Lord. Samashritam. This power ever takes refuge in the Lord. It is always present. So the power with which Bhagavan creates the world, we can say this power is Maya or Prakriti. In its unmanifest form, it is called as Avyakta. It is exactly like a strong person. So that strong person is there. So when he is not doing anything, that power is with him, but then we can say that power is Avyakta, unmanifest. But when that strong person does something, lifts some heavy object or something, then we say, yes, that power is manifest, Vyakta, isn't it? So when there is no creation, that power goes back into unmanifest state. So that unmanifest state is what is called as Avyakta. Vatakanikāyām iva vatavriksha shaktihi. Just like a seed of an Ashwatha tree or a peepal tree or any other tree, that seed is there. So that seed has the power to transform itself into a huge tree, but that power is not seen. So that unseen power which is functioning in this world, which is there in the potential form, which is the cause of every cause getting transformed into effect, Karana getting transformed into Karya, that power in its unmanifest form is called Avyakta. Put in short, the very same Mahat-tattva, the Hiranyagarbha, in its unmanifest state is what is called as Avyakta. So now what is being said here? Mahatah param avyaktam. This Avyakta is greater than Mahat-tattva, Hiranyagarbha. So again we can apply all these 5 definitions. Sukshmatvat. So definitely Avyakta is subtler compared to Mahat-tattva because it is in its unmanifest state. Anything in its unmanifest state is subtler, isn't it? Just like our thoughts in its unmanifest state, it is called vasanas. So all those vasanas are there. We are not able to watch them because it is unmanifest. But when that object of our desire comes in front, these very same vasanas, they emerge as thoughts, as desires. For example, suppose I have ice cream vasana, it is not seen, but the moment I see an ice cream vendor, then this ice cream vasana erupts as a desire for ice cream, and thus my mind intellect starts entertaining thoughts of ice cream. So where did these thoughts come from? It came from its unmanifest state, that vasana state. Then what happens? These thoughts take the form of actions. So I go there, I get the ice cream, all that. So this Avyakta is almost like the vasanas in us, which is there, potentially present, but unseen, unmanifest. So therefore Sukshmatva, it is definitely subtler than Mahat-tattva. Then Mahatvat, because it is from this Avyakta the Mahat-tattva comes, so naturally it is more important, more powerful, more pervading. That's another meaning of this Mahatva, pervasion. That which is more pervasive is also called Mahan. Mahatva. Then Pratyagatma Bhutat. Pratyagatma Bhutat. This Avyakta is still inner compared to Mahat-tattva. Now how can we say this? See, it is always like this. As the thought starts manifesting, as the vasanas start manifesting, you will always find that manifestation happens at the outer periphery of our personality. Greater the manifestation, the more it will go to the outer peripheries. You see? For example, vasanas are there deep down. It expresses as thoughts at the mind intellect level. So it has gone out. Then it expresses as action at the sense organ level. It has gone still further out, you see. So as the vasanas starts manifesting, you will find that these vasanas starts going away and away from us into the outer layers of our personality. Greater the manifestation, more externally it is expressed in action. So if this is the law, that greater the manifestation, more externalization happens. If this is the law, so definitely we can say Avyakta is nearer to us compared to Mahat-tattva. Pratyagatma Bhutat. It is nearer, more closer, just like vasanas are nearer to us compared to thoughts. More deeper in us compared to thoughts, and therefore more difficult to access, inaccessible. And then Karanatvat, of course, Avyakta is the Karana for Mahat-tattva because it is from Avyakta that entire Mahat-tattva comes out. So therefore it is a cause, Karanatvat. Then Niyamakatvat. It is the controller. Naturally, it has to be the controller because it is the content of the Avyakta which manifests as Mahat-tattva. Whatever is there in Avyakta alone can manifest in Mahat-tattva. So therefore we can say Avyakta is the controller of Mahat-tattva. So this way we can say Avyakta is higher than Mahat-tattva. Now, is there something higher than Avyakta also? Of course, yes. So the next one, Avyaktat Purusha Paraha. Compared to this Avyakta, Purusha is higher. Now what is this Purusha? So please understand, in the following verse it will clearly come. This Purusha is none other than the Supreme Self, the pure consciousness in us, the Satchit Ananda Atma. Why is it called Purusha? So there are so many definitions for Purusha. Purnatvat Purusha, that who is Purna, complete, perfect. Perfect by all means, Purna, which doesn't lack anything. So Purnatvat Purusha. There is another one, Puranat Purusha, that which fills up everything. That which fills up everything means that which pervades everything. Puranat Purusha. There is another one, Puri Shayanat Purusha, that who is residing in this Puri, the city of 9 gates, Navadware Puredehi. So this body is called Navadwarapura, city of 9 gates. So the one who is residing in this city, Puri Shayanat. So that Supreme Lord, a Supreme Self, is residing in this body. Therefore also he is called Purusha. So that Supreme Self, which is Satchidananda Swarupa, is called Purusha here. So what is being said? Avyaktat Purusha Paraha. Compared to Avyakta, this Purusha is supreme. So how to understand? Again, apply these 5 principles of definition of being high. So what are they? Number 1, Sukshmatvat. So Purusha is subtler than Avyakta. Of course it is true, because Purusha is the subtlest. There is nothing more subtle than Purusha. It is consciousness in us. It is this consciousness which is supporting the Avyakta. In the individual, the Avyakta is manifested as, it is experienced as vasanas. That is a better way of understanding what this Avyakta is at the individual level, vasanas. So these vasanas, where do they stay? Everything in this world stays in consciousness. So this consciousness is the subtlest. So naturally it is subtler than Avyakta. And then Mahat-tattva is important, more important, greater. Why? Because it is the very support. Without consciousness, there cannot be any existence for vasana. Vasanas exist in consciousness. So being the support, it is definitely greater and important. Mahat-tattva, Pratyagatma Bhutat. It is inner compared to Avyakta, and that is also true. Why is it so? Now please understand, this Purusha is what? It is the very consciousness, it is the very I in me. This is also called as Pratyagatma. The innermost self is consciousness. Meaning what? There cannot be anything inner than this self. Means what? It is me only. Now, can there be anything nearer to me than me? Can there be anything nearer to I than I? No. That is the limit. So therefore these vasanas, they are the outer level. Avyakta is at the outer level. This I, this pure consciousness, is the innermost self. So it is even inner compared to avyakta. Pratyagatma bhuta. Then karanatva, that is the very cause. Just like the waves exist in the ocean, in the water, in the same way these vasanas are also existing in consciousness. So therefore, being the support, we can call consciousness is the cause for this avyakta. Then niyamakatva, the same logic applies here also. It is a controller. Control in the sense what? It gives existence to vasanas. Everything in this world, from where do they get the existence? They get existence from Satchidananda Atma. So not only for avyakta, for all the other entities, existence is only a borrowed existence. And this borrowed existence is borrowed from the Purusha, which is of the nature of Sat existence. It is this Purusha which is giving existence to everything, because existence is the nature of this Purusha. You cannot have any other entity which has its own independent existence. Everybody borrows existence from Purusha. So in this sense, we can say Purusha is a controller. By giving its existence, others appear to exist. So therefore, niyamakatvat. So all the 5 definitions are perfectly true as far as Purusha is concerned. So therefore, avyaktat Purushaha paraha. Now a question may come, is there something higher than Purusha? Higher than Purusha means what? That entity should be subtler, that entity should be greater, that entity should be nearer, that entity should be controlling this Purusha. Is it possible? So here it's very clearly said, Purushat na param kinchit. There is nothing higher than this Purusha. Sa kashtha, that is a limit, that's the highest. Sa paragatihi, that is the highest state. Now please remember, who is this Purusha? Remember, it is a Vishnupadam which is being described here. So this highest state, which is the consciousness in us, which is the self in us. Remember, consciousness, self, etc. It is not told here, but later on, the very same Upanishad is going to use these terms. So therefore, I am using this term. Here it's only Purusha which is mentioned here. So this Purusha, this self, this consciousness in us, it is the ultimate reality of the whole world. See? Now, is there any entity in this list which is left out? So, from the sense objects, we have started the journey, and finally we have ended in this consciousness, proving that consciousness is the highest entity. So, therefore, you will find that the whole world, where does it exist? It exists in the mind, and the mind exists in consciousness. So, consciousness is the ultimate substratum support for the whole world. And remember, this consciousness is me, myself. It is this I. It is this aham. So the whole world, where is it existing? It is existing in this aham. And this aham, this I, is what is called as Vishnupadam. Vishnupadam you may call, or you may even call Vishnu. Vyapakatvat Vishnu. That state of Vishnu. So why this discussion is taken up? This discussion is taken up to make us clear that Vishnupadam is not somewhere outside, in some outer world, in some outer space. There are so many defects, logical defects we will have to accept if you consider that this world is somewhere outside. The moment you say this world is outside, then you will have to accept that this world is limited, because there are so many other worlds other than this world. So then Vishnupadam, if it is somewhere outside, then it will be a limited world, number one. Number two, let us assume that you have gone there. How did you go there? By performing karma in this world, you have reached there. Now, karma is finite or infinite? It is definitely finite. So, with a finite karma, if you reach that world, naturally as a karma phala you have got that world, karma phala also will be limited. So, then what happens? Once that karma phala is exhausted, you will have to come back. So, a permanent result is not possible with a limited action. Because earlier it is said, reaching where? Yasmad bhuyo na jayate, it is said. A person sadhu tatpadam apnoti yasmad bhuyo na jayate, verse number 8. After reaching that state, you will never come back. Arey, how is it possible? Assuming that this Vishnupada, this world, Vaikuntha is outside, this person has gone there because of his sadhana. Sadhana is limited, so the result of sadhana also should be limited. Only for some time he can stay there, but it is very clearly said, reaching there he doesn't come back. So what does it mean? He is getting permanent result for a limited action. So it is illogical. So therefore, by all means we have to understand Vishnupada is not somewhere outside. Vishnupada is none other than our own self, as mentioned in the Upanishad. Now we have the Shruti Pramana here. We can firmly, confidently say that this Vishnupada, the highest Vishnupada, truly speaking, is our own self. Yes, as I had mentioned earlier, the mind has the ability to project a world, whatever is described in the Puranas. A beautiful world, a perfect world, the mind has the ability. We don't deny that. But that cannot be the ultimate truth. Because if we assume that there is some other world outside, then it has got these problems, logical problems. It will have so many defects. And such a state can never be totally fulfilling because, as I said, there is Salokya, there is Arupya and Samipya. There are so many levels in that world also. So definitely a person who is only in the world, he will be jealous of another person who has Samipya, who is nearer to the Lord. And that fellow will be more jealous about another person who has Arupya, who is having a form similar to the Lord. You see? So a lot of Taratamya is, a lot of comparison, gradations are there. So that will be another problem. So how can you say that that world is free from all kinds of problems? It's not possible. So there are so many logical fallacies if we assume that this world is somewhere outside. Now this is perfect, this definition that we see here in Kathopanishad. In fact, all Upanishads, the definition that this Vishnupadam is not outside, it is the self in us, it is a consciousness in us, it is the very support of the whole world. And it is true, the whole world is supported in consciousness only. It is very clear, the whole world is seen in the mind. Mind is nothing but thoughts. These thoughts are seen in consciousness. So therefore consciousness is the ultimate support of the whole world. So this explanation is perfect. Now Bhagavan Shankarāchārya takes up a question . The question is, how can you say that there is no coming back? Yasmad bhuyo na jayate. Generally our scriptures say, Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama, as Bhagavad Gita says. Going where there is no coming back. So the question is, if there is a going, then definitely there has to be a coming also. Whenever we say going, there has to be coming. You go to some place, then you have to come back. How can you say there is only going, but there is no coming? Yad gatva, gatva means to go. You go, but there is no coming. How can you say that? This question is taken up. An interesting question. So what is the answer? You see, what is the definition of going? Going means traveling from our home to a foreign land. This is called going. What is the definition of coming? Traveling from the foreign land to our home is called coming, isn't it? Yes. Now tell me, which is our true home? The self or the body, mind, intellect? Actually speaking, our true home is the Supreme Self. So this travel from the sense objects to the sense organs to the mind to the intellect, this travel, where are we traveling to? We are traveling to our own sweet home, the Self. So it is not going, it is actually coming, because we are returning to our sweet home. In fact, we are in the foreign land. When we identify with the BMI, the body, mind, intellect, where are we? We are not in our home. In our delusion, we think we are at home. Actually, this BMI is a foreign land. It is not our home. We are a traveler. So, when we go from BMI to the self, it is homecoming, because we are already in the foreign land. That is why it is said, Yad Gatva na nivartante. Actually, it is not Gatva, it is not going, it is actually coming. Then why is this term used, going? The term going is used because in our ignorance at present, we think we are at home, we think BMI is the home. So, if we assume that BMI is home, then yes, it is going only. But in reality, it is not going, it is coming. So this beautiful aspect Bhagavan Shankarāchārya has taken up. So though we use the term going, etc., it is not going, it is actually coming. Right, now the question comes, what is the qualification necessary to reach this Vishnupadam? What is the qualification necessary to reach our sweet home, the Supreme Self? So this is taken up in the next verse. We will see it in the next class. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om